You need to move. Karen Hastings' voice cut through the cabin, sharp, unwavering. This seat isn't for you. Jamal Carter blinked up at her, momentarily thrown off. Excuse me? Passengers shifted in their seats, heads turning. Some watched with open curiosity, others sank into uncomfortable silence. You heard me, Karen snapped, arms folded. First class is reserved for paying customers. Jamal's grip tightened on the armrest. A murmur rippled through the cabin. Someone coughed. Another cleared their throat. Yet no one spoke up. I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be, Jamal said evenly, refusing to break eye contact. Karen scoffed. I doubt that. Jamal exhaled through his nose, keeping his composure. He reached into his pocket, retrieving his boarding pass. Here, he said, holding it out. Karen snatched it without so much as a glance. Nice try. She waved it dismissively. I don't care what scam you pulled. Get out. A couple, in the next row, exchanged nervous glances. A teenage boy pulled out his phone, pressing record. Jamal clenched his jaw. Look at the ticket. Karen's eyes flickered over the paper, but her stance didn't shift. I'll call security. Jamal's pulse drummed in his ears. He could feel the weight of every gaze on him. The air in the cabin grew thick. A hush spread through the cabin. A businessman in a crisp suit adjusted his tie and stared at the seat back in front of him. A woman in the aisle seat glanced at Jamal, then quickly looked away. Further down, a younger flight attendant shifted uncomfortably, gripping the beverage cart's handle. But no one spoke. No one intervened. Jamal let out a slow breath, scanning the faces around him. Silent spectators. Witnesses to an unfolding humiliation, Karen smirked, triumphant in the absence of resistance. Jamal straightened his shoulders. If no one else would break the silence, he would. A firm voice cut through the tension. Sir, we need to have a word. Jamal turned his head as a uniformed security officer entered the cabin. His expression unreadable. Karen stepped back, arms crossed, smug satisfaction written all over her face. The officer glanced at Karen before fixing his gaze on Jamal. I need you to step out. Jamal inhaled slowly, steadying himself. On what grounds? The officer's expression didn't waver. Please don't make this harder than it needs to be. Passengers leaned in, waiting, watching, judging. Karen's smirk widened. You heard him. Jamal met her gaze, searching for even a flicker of doubt. But there was none. He could argue, fight, or make a scene. Or he could play the long game. His fingers curled over the phone in his pocket. Jamal's pulse hammered. A dozen ways to react raced through his mind. Call her out? Demand justice? Or give in? He glanced at his phone. One tap. That's all it would take to document everything. Karen shifted impatiently, waiting for him to snap, to confirm whatever story she'd already crafted in her mind. Jamal flexed his jaw. I know exactly what's happening here. Karen let out a dry chuckle. Oh, are we playing the race card now? She turned to the watching passengers. Classic. A few uneasy murmurs rose from the cabin. The teenage boy's phone was still recording. Jamal tapped the screen. The display dimmed. A decision was made. He looked up, locking eyes with Karen. Let's see how this plays out. And then, the screen faded to black. Jamal Carter leans back in his seat, the hum of the airplane blending with his thoughts. At 38, his path in the aviation industry hasn't been an easy one. From the moment he started, it was clear that he wasn't going to be handed anything. Doors were often closed, opportunities sparse. He had to prove himself. Over and over again, his rise wasn't luck, it was the result of relentless determination. But despite his achievements, the skepticism still lingered. In rooms where his white counterparts received respect without question, Jamal often felt like he had to earn it all over again. After years of pushing, Jamal finally secured the role he'd been working towards. Vice President of Operations. It was a promotion that turned heads, a victory that sent a clear message. He had broken through the glass ceiling, but with that power came a different kind of challenge. The whispers began almost immediately. Some people questioned whether he truly deserved the position or if it was just a quota being filled. Jamal had expected this. It was a burden he was willing to bear, but that didn't make it any easier. As Jamal settles into his first-class seat, he doesn't allow himself to indulge in the luxury of it all. This isn't about comfort. It's business. His fingers lightly tap the edge of his armrest as he mentally prepares for the meeting awaiting him. He earned this seat. He's worked for it, fought for it. Yet, as his eyes scan the cabin, he can feel the weight of the stairs, the quiet judgment in the air. A few passengers glance in his direction, eyes narrowed, as if they're wondering how he ended up in a place he doesn't belong. It's a feeling he knows all too well. For a moment, Jamal lets himself savor the small victory. He's here, in this seat, in this moment, because of every late night, every setback, every barrier that he fought to overcome. There were times he thought he wouldn't make it, times he doubted himself as doors slammed shut in his face. But today, he's not just a passenger on a flight. He's a leader in this industry. He's about to walk into an executive meeting as the vice president. Yet, despite the triumph that comes with it, something is gnawing at him. There's a storm brewing just beyond the horizon. And Jamal knows that this victory, like so many before, will not be without its challenges. But this time, things will be different. Jamal steps onto the plane, his eyes scanning the cabin before meeting the gaze of Karen. Her smile is warm as she greets the white passengers ahead of him, but when her eyes land on him, her expression tightens. The warmth vanishes. Her face flattens, and her greeting is curt, her tone robotic. "Window seat, 3B, she mutters, barely looking at him. Jamal can feel the subtle shift in the air, the judgment that hangs around her. He's used to it, though. He's been through this countless times before. But even after all these years, it doesn't get easier. As Jamal struggles to lift his carry-on into the overhead compartment, his eyes briefly meet Karen's. He asks politely, "Excuse me, could you help me with this?" Her response is a simple eye roll, followed by her turning her back, pretending not to hear. Jamal exhales slowly, tightening his grip on the bag. Moments later, a white passenger approaches the same compartment, asking for assistance. Karen's eyes light up, and she moves quickly to help, offering a bright smile. "Of course, sir," she says, lifting the bag with ease. Jamal's jaw clenches. The double standard is glaring, but he doesn't say anything. He's learned to pick his battles. Karen continues her rounds, her voice dripping with condescension as she makes her way down the aisle. Jamal leans back in his seat, trying to focus on the pre-flight briefing. He doesn't want to get into it, not today. But then Karen stops in front of him, arms crossed, a smirk playing at the corners of her lips. "Surprised you can afford this seat," she says, loud enough for a few people to overhear. Jamal doesn't flinch. He's heard it before. "You sure you're in the right place?" she adds, her tone even sharper. He meets her gaze, cool and measured. "I'm exactly where I belong," he responds quietly. Karen leans in slightly, a mocking tone edging her next words. "You must be an athlete or something." Jamal takes a deep breath, choosing silence, but inside, it stings. As the flight continues, Jamal can feel the tension building between him and Karen. Her microaggressions are no longer subtle. When the seatbelt sign is turned off, she approaches him with a forced smile, demanding his boarding pass again, as if she's expecting a mistake. Jamal hands it to her without saying a word. She scans it slowly, then nods. "Just making sure." He nods back, the calmness in his face betraying none of the frustration he's feeling. Later, As she walks down the aisle, distributing pre-flight drinks, she intentionally skips over him. Jamal's eyes narrow, but he doesn't speak up. Instead, he watches as she serves the passengers around him with practiced ease, all while ignoring him completely. A few passengers glance at him, their discomfort palpable, but most pretend not to notice. Jamal lets out a quiet sigh. He knows this is far from over, and this time, he won't stay silent for long. Jamal leans back in his seat, ready for the brief moment of calm before the meeting ahead. He presses the button above his armrest. "Excuse me, could I get a ginger ale, please?" His voice is even, polite, expecting nothing more than a simple transaction. Karen's eyes snap to him, her lips curling into a thin line. She looks him up and down before responding. "I need to see your ID. You don't look like you belong here." The words land like a slap, cold and deliberate. The room seems to hold its breath. Jamal blinks, taken aback, but remains composed. A few rows ahead, a white passenger orders the same drink, and Karen serves it without a second thought. No ID check. Jamal exhales slowly, his patience fraying, but he says nothing. He knows this is no accident. It's intentional, a clear reminder of his place. Jamal leans forward, his tone controlled but firm. "Why are you checking my ID? You didn't ask anyone else." Karen's smirk widens, and she chuckles loudly, an exaggerated mocking sound that cuts through the cabin. "Oh, are we pulling the race card now?" she says, her voice laced with sarcasm. Classic. The words hang in the air, stinging harder than they should. Jamal's heart beats faster, the humiliation settling deep. But it's not just her words. It's the way she says them. Like he's not even worth a real response. Some passengers chuckle, a few too many, joining in while others fidget in their seats, avoiding eye contact. A few are too uncomfortable to speak up, but the air feels thick with tension. Karen's laugh lingers, as though she's the one in control. Jamal's fists clench, but he takes a deep breath. This won't be the moment he lets her win. Jamal's jaw tightens. This moment, this public degradation, has crossed a line. He's had enough. "I want to speak with your supervisor," he says, voice steady but firm. Karen's smile falters, her eyes narrowing. The tension shifts. She's no longer in control of the situation, and she doesn't like it. Her voice turns sharp, dripping with authority. "I am the authority here. You need to learn your place," she snaps. The words land like a hammer, echoing through Jamal's body. It's not just the disrespect in her voice. It's the history behind it, the weight of centuries of oppression that seem to reverberate through her words. Jamal's breath catches in his throat, the injustice of it all threatening to suffocate him. The surrounding passengers glance nervously at one another, some shifting uncomfortably in their seats, others avoiding the situation altogether. No one speaks up. Jamal's heart pounds in his chest, but he remains calm, meeting Karen's gaze. He won't let her define him. Not here, not now. Karen's frustration twists into something darker. Her voice rises shrill with a new manufactured urgency. "You're harassing me," she shouts, drawing the eyes of everyone nearby. Jamal's stomach drops as her words ring out, loud and accusatory. Her eyes dart around the cabin, looking for support, but none comes. She signals to the flight attendant nearby, and within seconds, a security officer appears at the front of the cabin. Karen's tone softens, but her words are just as sharp. "This man is making me feel unsafe," she says, her voice trembling with a mix of anger and something closer to performance. Jamal stands, his mind racing, but his face remains calm. The officer looks at him, eyes scanning. "Sir, I'm going to need you to step out of your seat," the officer says, voice neutral, but the implication is clear. "If you don't comply, we'll have to escalate." Jamal's pulse quickens, the sting of betrayal heavy in his chest. He doesn't resist, but the humiliation is complete. You'll be removed from the flight at the next stop, the officer adds, his words echoing in Jamal's ears as the weight of the situation sinks in. A passenger, a few rows back, discreetly holds up their phone, capturing the entire altercation on video. The flash of the camera is subtle, but Jamal sees it. He locks eyes with the person, silently pleading for them to intervene, to speak up. But they look away, not even offering a sign of solidarity. The rest of the cabin remains silent, a heavy, suffocating silence. Jamal swallows his frustration, his gaze flicking around the room. No one is willing to stand with him. Not yet. This moment isn't over. The intercom crackles to life, startling the passengers. "Good afternoon, everyone," the captain's voice announces. "We are honored to have a special guest on board. Our new Vice President of Operations, Jamal Carter." The words hang in the air like a heavy weight. The cabin falls silent, a palpable tension spreading like wildfire. Jamal can feel every pair of eyes on him. The once quiet hum of the plane now replaced by a stunned stillness. Some passengers shift uncomfortably in their seats. Others exchange confused glances. For Jamal, it's a moment of vindication, but the silence speaks volumes. He's no longer just another passenger. He's the man they can no longer ignore. The captain's words have changed everything. And in an instant, the dynamics on the plane have shifted. Karen's confident smirk falters, her usual arrogance replaced by an expression of pure shock. Her eyes widen, and for a split second she blinks as if trying to make sense of what she's just heard. Her body stiffens, and the color drains from her face, turning her into a ghost of her former self. The realization dawns on her like a heavy weight. A man she's demeaned and tried to belittle is now her superior. She turns slowly, her eyes flicking over to Jamal, who remains seated with calm composure. The passengers around them are whispering now, some in disbelief, others in amusement, all watching the power dynamic shift before their eyes. Jamal's promotion, his achievement, is no longer just a fact. It's a challenge to everything she's ever believed in. The predator is now the prey. Karen's world has just tilted, and there's no way for her to hide it. The realization settles in, and with it, the uncomfortable truth. She has no control here. The cockpit door swings open, and the pilot strides confidently into the cabin, breaking the oppressive silence. He spots Jamal and moves toward him with purpose, his hand outstretched in greeting. "Mr. Carter," the pilot says warmly, "welcome aboard. We're honored to have you." Jamal stands, his calmness a stark contrast to the tension around them. The handshake is firm, respectful, and laden with a meaning. Jamal feels the weight of the moment, but he remains composed, offering a polite smile in return. The room feels even quieter now, every set of eyes glued to the exchange. Karen watches in frozen silence, her body rigid as the handshake unfolds. Her authority, the small shred of power she had held, crumbles before her. She's nothing now but a bystander to a moment she cannot control. Jamal's cool composure is a silent rebuke to everything she's ever believed about her dominance over him. And for the first time, she's the one who feels small, insignificant. The pilot's simple gesture, a handshake, speaks volumes. It's a moment of respect, a moment that Karen cannot take away, no matter how hard she tries to regain control. Jamal doesn't need to say a word. He simply turns his attention back to Karen, his gaze meeting hers with quiet, unshakable power. There's no fury in his eyes, no anger bubbling beneath the surface. Just control, calm, unflinching control. This moment, this shift in power, doesn't require words. His very presence is enough. Karen's lips part, her chest rising and falling with nervous breaths as she attempts to form a response, but nothing comes out. She's rendered speechless, her mind scrambling to reclaim some semblance of authority, but it's futile. The room has already spoken, and the passengers' smirks tell the tale. Some revel in her discomfort, while others exchange knowing looks. They see her for what she is now, a woman who thought she could wield power over others, only to realize her privilege can be stripped away in an instant. Karen forces a laugh, a hollow, nervous sound that doesn't fool anyone. Her hands tremble slightly, betraying her facade. She's a woman at the edge, her once confident demeanor shattered. Jamal doesn't flinch. He watches her, unbothered, letting the silence speak for him. The tables have turned, and Karen knows it. She can't take it back. As the plane comes to a halt and passengers begin disembarking, Karen rushes after Jamal. Her face is flushed, panic clouding her features. The proud demeanor she once held has vanished, replaced by a desperate look. Sweat beads on her forehead as she stammers, trying to salvage what little dignity she has left. I didn't realize. I was just following protocol, she babbles, her voice quivering. Jamal doesn't move, his back still turned to her as he stands in the aisle. His expression is unreadable, but the tension in the air is thick, hanging between them like an unspoken truth. Jamal doesn't respond. He doesn't have to. Her words are hollow. Her apology is just another attempt to erase what she's done. The weight of the situation presses on her, and in that moment, she knows her apology won't change anything. It's too late. Finally, after what feels like an eternity, Jamal speaks, his voice calm but firm. We'll discuss this in my office. Karen's breath catches in her throat. His words hit her like a freight train, and for the first time, she realizes the full scope of her actions. The mistakes she made are no longer something she can hide from. The truth is out, and her position is on the line. The passengers lingering near the gate, some filming with their phones, only heighten the tension. They murmur, whispering about the poetic justice they're witnessing unfold before their eyes. Jamal stands still, not looking at her, but his words hang in the air, echoing. He's not angry. He's in control. The passengers' eyes flick to her, some offering brief looks of sympathy, others barely concealing their satisfaction. Jamal doesn't glance back as he walks away, but the way he carries himself makes it clear. The conversation will be held on his terms. The balance of power has shifted completely. The pilot and the crew escort Karen off the plane as passengers file out behind her. There's no applause, no shouts, just an eerie silence that follows her as she's led to HR. Her footsteps feel heavier with each stride, and she knows, deep down, that her fate has been sealed. Multiple passengers, their phones already buzzing with the uploads, have captured every moment of her behavior. Video evidence from the flight is now in the hands of HR, making her actions undeniable. It's a matter of public record now. She can't escape what's coming. Inside the HR office, a senior executive reads aloud the allegations against her. Each word feels like another nail in her coffin. The air is thick with anticipation, and Karen can feel her knees buckling as the gravity of her actions hits her. When the executive announces her immediate suspension, Karen's vision blurs. The room spins, and she collapses, the weight of her own ignorance and arrogance finally overwhelming her. Jamal doesn't stay to watch. He doesn't need to. The victory is already his, in the silence of his composed walk away from the scene. There's no need for celebration, no room for taunts. He's already won, and the victory is sweeter because of it. He moves with quiet dignity, each step an unspoken testament to the strength it took to get here. Respect isn't demanded, it's earned. His actions speak louder than any words he could ever say. The moment is his, but he doesn't need to boast about it. The passengers watch, some admiring his restraint, others feeling the weight of the moment. For Jamal, this is not the end. It's just another step in the journey. As soon as Jamal exits the plane, passengers waste no time. The videos of Karen's behavior spread like wildfire on social media. The hashtag number, respect is a right, begins trending, and the airline is soon flooded with comments demanding accountability. The company quickly issues a public apology, vowing to make significant changes to their policies regarding employee conduct and diversity. Their response, though swift, feels too little, too late. The damage has been done. The world watches as this moment of justice unfolds, and it's clear. The conversation is far from over. The ripple effect is undeniable, and a shift is beginning. Final line. Respect is not a privilege, it's a right. Have you ever witnessed or experienced discrimination like this? It's a question that many of us can relate to in some way. Whether we've been on the receiving end, seen it happen to someone else, or been too afraid to speak up, these moments of injustice affect us all. How would you have reacted if you were in Jamal's place? Think about it. What would you do when faced with blatant discrimination in front of you? Would you speak out, stay silent, or find another way to challenge the system? Share your thoughts in the comments. This is more than just a story. It's a question about what we stand for. Your voice matters. Like, share, and comment to keep the conversation going. Every click, every comment helps amplify the message. Stories like Jamal's don't just speak to the individual, they speak to all of us. By engaging, you're helping to raise awareness and make a difference. Stories like this deserve to be heard. Let's make a change together. Your actions can help spark a ripple of change. Join the movement, amplify the message, and let's make the world a place where respect is a right, not a privilege. Let's make sure this story is just the beginning.